What's up, everybody? It's Zane Denani. Not a tight 10 today. Instead, what we're doing is I know a lot of people that follow really like information on best ball, and I'm a best ball nut. So, what I wanted to do today, last year, I presented a list of players that I believe were going to provide leverage on the field, which I'm now coining as the leverage list. And this year, I'm doing the same thing. And about the same date, actually, last year was August 25th that I posted this. This year, I'm posting it on August 26th, Wednesday. Enough time with tournaments left to potentially get some strong leverage on the field. I'm reading off the names that I had last year on this list, and these are the names that probably like hit. So, I mean, there's names that definitely didn't. So I'll be honest with you there. But Harold Fannin, one of the lists. AJ Barner, another one that hit. I had two tight ends that didn't hit as well. Again, we're getting into like the last round of best ball drafts. And when we're talking about that, it's really tough to hit anything. So the fact that this did hit, I think, is pretty significant. Harold Fannin, AJ Barner, two tight ends that didn't hit, Tyler Higbee and Tyler Conklin. Higbee may have hit like earlier in the season, like maybe hit your lineup once, but he got injured. So that didn't help him. On top of that, some other names, and I'm not sharing my screen. This is just me talking through it because I have my screen set up for the actual list that I'm going to unveil here in a minute. Other names are Kyle Monangai. He hit, obviously. Ollie Gordon, I don't think he hit. Sean Tucker, I don't think he hit. Chris Rodriguez, I think he hit because he did hit lineups a couple times last year. Kendre Miller did not hit. Damian Pierce did not hit. The receivers, I'd say like we're at 2.5 on this list. Troy Franklin hit. He hit lineups plenty of times. Tre Tucker, another one that hit lineups plenty of times. Again, it matters when they hit too. Like if they can hit in week 15, 16, 17, that's awesome, but doesn't always work out that way. Tre Tucker had some 20-point weeks last year. Troy Franklin was up there too. Malik Washington was another one. I don't believe he hit. He might, like, I'm not looking at points right now, so I'm just like going off of memory. And Kevontae Turpin, who got usurped by Ryan Flournoy by the end of the season for that wide receiver 3 job. Man, if we knew Ryan Flournoy, that would have been crazy leverage. This year, I've been more deep in the weeds in terms of tracking news. And so I'm going to unveil a list of players and talk through every single one of them that I think can provide leverage. There's also 2 players on the list that I don't think are providing leverage, but are like still interesting darts to throw late in drafts as things get wrapped up. Just some interesting names. So without further ado, I'm going to go through the list one by one. I'm not going to share the full list in this because I think it'll probably get screenshotted and maybe shared amongst people. So I'm only sharing one name at a time. If you do want to know, you're gonna have to watch the whole thing to go through it. So I'm just gonna go through it one by one. And this is in any sort of rank order. This is just the order that I decided to put them in on purpose. But one of the names here is Kimani Vidal. Kimani Vidal is very interesting to me because I do still believe that he can be the premier backup for Omarion Hampton, that Keaton Mitchell has his own role. And I want as many darts in this offense as possible, just especially the run game, knowing that they're extremely live to just like have a nuclear season in the run game. So Kimani Vidal being one of those names that I'm very interested in. I have my current projections set for ownership at 35%, with the final projected ownership at 42%. Keaton Mitchell is questionably injured right now. We don't really know much about that situation. I'm sure he'll be fine. But at the same time, like he is always injured also. Like that just is part of his MO. Fast guy, soft tissue injuries, different things like that. Also had major injuries as well. So his projected ownership is at 42%. I have his velocity as rising. Obviously, his ADP is going up a little bit. I've been taking him a decent amount. I should have pulled up my underdog on a different screen to pull up what my actual like ownership rate of these players are in specifically Best Ball Mania. I'm going to do now. But he's definitely a guy that I've been targeting probably throughout because I've always felt this way about it. But I think we've gotten enough information on him. I've taken him 6% so far, and I think that's a lot for like late round players. And those are completed drafts, so I have a lot of like slow drafts that are still going right now too. Cool. Moving on to the next name in the list, I'm going to filter this to number 2. Oh, crap. All right. Number 2, I just wanted to talk about Mike Washington. I have him listed as a red because his ownership rate is going to be too high, but he was going pretty early. He wasn't going as often over the past like few weeks. He started rising, obviously with the Genty injury. My current ownership projection is at 91%. There was like some time in the summer where he was falling after the draft, and then he just kind of like dipped into a spot where he wasn't going as often, and then he obviously got that rise with the Genty injury. So he's like, I have him ranked a little bit below his ADP. So I have him red as a guy that I'm not targeting because he's steamed so much above where I think that he should be going. Plus, final ownership projection, you're not getting any leverage on him. So 93%. I'm not going to spend too much time on the guys that like I don't want to take, but I just wanted to tell you guys that this is a guy that I don't want to take. As I'm going through the rest, make sure you follow me on X. Like I post stuff. I'm going to be posting stuff throughout the season, news, notes, analysis, film breakdowns, all sorts of stuff. Subscribe to this YouTube channel or on Spotify or Apple. I think those are also important because I'll continually give you nuggets that I don't always post on Twitter. And then lastly, if you want to use my rankings, they're on Fantasy Life, and you can use them directly against and load them directly into whatever platform, or they have a draft companion tool that works currently for ESPN leagues. And I believe it'll start working for Yahoo and Sleeper leagues soon enough too. Also, there's a waiver wire tool that they have too that I think is super interesting because I'm doing a ton of leagues this year, and it's hard for me to do the analysis with all the variable budgets and how valuable different players in different league. So I'm glad that there's a tool available that does that. Use promo code Zane for 10% off on that. All right. Number 3, and this is a green player because, and I have it red, yellow, green because if you look at when we talked about the first player, which I'm going to go back to, Vidal was yellow, and that's because his ownership projection doesn't give me, it gives me leverage, but it doesn't give me so significant leverage, right? So it's like, all right, half the field has drafted this player, or like 1/3 of the field has drafted this player. So like I'm getting leverage, but I'm not getting crazy leverage. Whereas number 3, Seth McGowan, I am getting crazy leverage because right now the projected ownership is at roughly 3%. I think there's like 20% of drafts left, and I'm expecting the final ownership to be at about 5% at the moment. Now this could change because obviously I'm doing this show. I don't know how much how much pull I have. I don't know how much pull like other people that would be watching this show have, and maybe talk about the same players. But Seth McGowan is one that I can confidently project when I had like my end number that he'll be below 15% in general, which is significant leverage if Jonathan Taylor gets hurt. Obviously, they're live to sign somebody else, like a veteran free agent that could become available, James Conner, Trey Benson, all sorts of stuff. And that's probably why he's still staying down here. But for all intents and purposes, he's going to be their RB2 as with the information that we have right now. And I feel like that is just a crazy amount of leverage to have. Jonathan Taylor has missed games in every single season, basically, other than last year. If that happens in the tournament and you get Seth McGowan to be your running back, there's really no depth behind him either. Like they have Ulysses, I don't even remember, Bentley behind him. DJ Giddens is probably going to be cut based off of what I was reading. So it's like, all right, this is the guy. And he's also a big player, so he's going to probably do the goal line touchdown stuff as well. Yeah, this one is a rocket ship for me. I try to target him as much as I can at the end of drafts right now. I have about 30 Best Ball Manias left, and my I'm quickly going to my drafts. I have taken him 3 times so far. I'm going to keep trying to do that, but there's other names on this list too, and so it's all positional based. This is not just running backs. We've got receivers, we've got tight ends. So we got to keep all of that in consideration. All right, number 4 on the leverage list. This might also be a red player. Yeah, it is. Sean Tucker, a guy that I actually have ranked above his ADP, and the reason why I am interested in him in drafts above his ADP originally was because of 2 things. One, he might get cut from this Bucks team, and I know a lot of people are like, "Why would they cut him?" Well, the reason, or moved, just generally. Well, a lot of the reason is because they really like Josh Williams, who's a rookie, and they would have the ability to keep Josh Williams on a super cheap contract for 4 years, compared to Sean Tucker, who they have 1 year left with, who they have no guaranteed money attached to right now, and are signed for like $3 million. So they can cut him or they can move him for free, basically, and keep a guy that they like who could be their RB3, and have him for multiple seasons beyond what Sean Tucker brings. So this is a good time for them to potentially trade him for a late round pick, or to just cut him. Do I know how likely that is? I have no idea, but the fact that it's even been mentioned to me means like it's possible. So that's one reason to potentially be interested in him, because he could go to a different situation, and let's just say like that's the case. But current ownership projection is 91%. Final 87%, because he's actually falling in ADP, which means he's fading away. I'm not taking him right now, but I have him on this list because I wanted to just address the fact that he is a guy that could randomly sign with the team and get into a favorable situation. Like, wouldn't we all be interested if he signed with the Commanders? Or wouldn't we all be interested if he was on the Vikings? Or one of those situations where we feel like starters aren't like great, like he has an opportunity to carve out an initial role, or even be a backup to some of these like more weird situations, like some names I'm going to that I already talked about, like Seth McGowan or Malik Davis, who's coming next on this list. Oh no, Samaje Perine next, and yeah, this is another place where Sean Tucker could go. Samaje Perine right now I have at 10% ownership. His ADP is a little bit higher than what we just saw with Seth McGowan, but current projection is at 10%. It seems like that's kind of stabilizing, and it's just going to kind of sit there. In my rankings, I have him at like 190 something, which technically around there, that's where like at this point in the draft, people are like always kind of throwing darts, but also positional need and stacks and all that kind of goes into consideration. And I am personally one of those people that thinks like the last 2 rounds you can do the leverage picks, like maybe round 16 you could too, but above that, like I'm a little bit less risky with like leverage picks for the most of the part. So anyway, Samaje Perine. I got a question from Dave Kluge on this situation, and I think people have 2 varying opinions, and that's totally fine. So this is not to call him out. Like I think what he's thinking is valid, because it was my initial thought as well. But I do think that, and the question was like, are we sure he's not just like going to be a Justice Hill role if something happens to Chase Brown, right? And my answer to that is like, there's been no indication that they're interested in doing anything with Taj Brooks. Okay. He was on the roster bubble. He plays on special teams. The other thing that I would say about Samaje Perine is that when he subs in for Chase Brown, which he does sub in for Chase Brown, they're not just throwing the ball. It's not like he's playing a Dare Ogunbowale role. Like, they run the ball with him up the middle. They showed that in preseason too, and they've shown it last year. So like that to me signals like that they are okay with him like doing rushing work. And it's an ugly name because it's like, oh, I don't really like Samaje Perine, but it is the profile that can also do well in fantasy football because 1, it's good offense. 2, like they don't have to take him off the field for pass down stuff, for passing situations because they like him in that situation. And then they also don't mind giving him rushes up the middle, like which signals like goal line potential opportunities too. So I think that this is a good leverage play. I have him as green because he's below, he's like within a threshold that I think is like significant leverage. So another guy that I'm mixing in at the end of drafts right now. any questions in the chat. I just want to make sure that I'm addressing any questions, and I can do some of this at the end too. But I want to make sure that you guys are all getting all the information that you could possibly want and need. All right. All right, let's keep moving forward. Back to the list. Number 6 is probably a name that I already said. Yes, it is. Malik Davis. ADP is basically at the bottom. This was 216 as of like 2 or 3 days ago. Now it's rising to 215. Technically considered stable. People aren't willing to take chances on this. I tweeted about him last night. I don't have like significant inside sources with the Cowboys, but I am decently closer with their beat and people that cover the team than I am with any other situation. And he's just a guy that does everything right, which is ugly, right? Like his 40 time was 4.67, I believe, which is very similar to Kyron Williams. I compared him to Kyron Williams. He he's not a speed burner or anything like that, even though he had a nice play against the Chiefs last season on Thanksgiving. But the way the coaches talk about him, he does everything right, basically. It's like, hey, do you want Schottenheimer talked about him in pass pro, that he's very reliable there, that he's good between the tackles, that he's always like kind of in the right spots. And that's something that I think is very reliable, that the team can count on if Javonte Williams misses time. Of course, they're live to sign anybody as well. But I think that they've actually just said in their mind that like they already have a roster crunch, right? So like they want to keep Jaden Blue on this roster. They want to maybe try to keep Phil Maffa around on like the practice squad. So naturally, if they were to actually pursue somebody, I think it would be tough for them to keep those guys around. I don't think that they're going to pursue anybody. Obviously, there's a history with Clayton Adams and Trey Benson and James Conner. I think they're just going to be comfortable with Malik Davis. They don't like to invest too much in the running back position. I think they're just going to be comfortable with Malik Davis being this RB2. And, you know, it's pretty much a unanimous consensus amongst all the beats, Nick Harris, Jeff Cavagnaw, Clarence Hill, Todd Archer, whoever else you want to mention, that think that this is the case for him. I'm taking shots on it. I think it's a really, really strong leverage pick if something happens to Javonte. All right, let's move on to the next name. Number 7 on the leverage list. I think we're getting into receivers now, but gotta remember off the top of my head. Nope, we're still on running backs. We got 2 more running backs that are somewhat interesting. Kalen Black is another. I don't know how to feel about this situation, so I'm throwing this name out, and I'm not fully recommending it. Right? Like I'm just telling you that the leverage exists here. It's close enough to the cut line, which I think is like 50%, where I'm like starting to prioritize players. Because then you start thinking about like, okay, it's an average. If we think about like the 51%, the average advance rate is going to be roughly 17%, and then we cut that in half to make an assumption about like, hey, maybe 50% of those teams won. Like, since Kalen Black's only been on 50% of teams, like maybe the way that it all mixes up when we get to advance rates and stuff is that he's on 50% of the teams that advance as well. Not 50%, but you know what I mean, like the 17% and then 50% of that, 50% of that, which is 8.5%. And so like now we're getting to a point where we're just getting like incremental leverage, right? And we don't know when he's going to hit. We don't know if Christian McCaffrey will miss time or whatever, but he's got an opportunity to do that. So far, like the film itself looked good on him with pass pro. I didn't see anything great on like route running particularly. But we know there's still like kind of a position battle between him and Jordan James, who's also on the list. His projected ownership is at about 51%. So I think that's close enough to still say, hey, there's probably some leverage here. He's rising. But the other name here, Jordan James, is fading, right? And it's because of the opposite. We just saw Kalen Black play in a preseason game. He's probably had 4 or 5 more practices than Jordan James has. And Jordan James has a full year worth of experience above him. So that means he's had time to work on his route running, being in the system, knowing the footwork, the timing, all sorts of stuff that come with being a running back in the Shanahan scheme. So I still think that he has a chance to win this RB2 job, um, because I think that he's a little bit more complete than Kalen Black coming out of college. Now, Kalen Black obviously could be a better runner, and they may prioritize that, but I think that Jordan James is probably a better pass catcher. And then we could maybe call it a wash at pass pro, but at least Jordan James has 1 year of experience learning how they like to do it in the NFL. And I tend to lean towards we all get excited about this shiny object, and the guy that didn't play last year, which I tweeted about maybe like a month ago, we all just kind of like fade. And this is a perfect example of that, where I think 31% ownership. He's in this yellow category for me, but I've taken probably more of him because I was a little bit more speculative on this situation than some of the other names. But I think that he could still be an interesting one. And I know there's the whole thing about taking zeros and stuff too. This is very much a chance that you have that could be zeros, um, but yeah, I still think that he is okay to draft if you are interested in that. Moving on to receivers. Okay, so a name that's rising, and I still wanted to make sure I talked about him, and I have him as yellow because I still think that it's a good decision to draft him, even if you're chasing him up the board. And the reason why is because so much of the contest had already gone by before the name Jacoby Lane started popping up, right? So he's currently at a projected ownership of 39%, with final projected ownership at about 52%. Um, he's going to be drafted probably in every single draft moving forward. There's probably no situation that he won't. And so, in my estimation, the way that I think about this, right, uh, you're still going to get leverage on all the teams that didn't get him. There's teams that drafted at the beginning that got amazing Stephon Diggs values, right? But what can you get that they can't get? And the answer is it's guys like Jacoby Lane and some other names that I'm going to mention as well that are steaming up in ADP, but you may get some leverage on those teams once you get into week 15, 16, and 17 by still taking these names that are rising. And I think it's worth chasing them up a little bit because of the leverage that you still may get by selecting them. And again, I think that if you haven't listened to my show before, you can go back and listen. I think they all build on each other, so it all works out. But with Jacoby Lane, I think that you're still getting a guy that could be a top 2 target earner in this offense that is supposed to do really well. Um, and I think that there's significant value in that. Now, there's also the situation where he could be option 4, and that's not that valuable. But I think once you're starting to get towards like 140 in ADP or so, maybe like 130, where Rashid Shaheed goes, like after that, I feel like there's such a big tier break in receiver where I'm comfortable chasing names like Jacoby Lane up a little bit because I know I'm certain he's going to get playing time at this point. I'm going to check the chat for questions really quick. Again, I'm not sharing all the names in a list, but I do want to make sure that I am addressing everybody's questions as we go along here. We would love to see Sean Tucker on the Bengals or Cowboys. Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd be happy with that. But at the same time, right now we don't have any clue. So we're just going to operate as if we have the best information we have possible. There's probably only like 2 weeks left to draft. So, we got to make some assumptions here and have like our leverage list handy as we're going about it. All right, moving on to the next name. Cyrus Allen kind of falls in that same cluster as Jacoby Lane. I think he's a thinner bet because he's currently wide receiver 4 on the team, but he also has the higher upside because what if he's actually really good and he's what if he's the most talented receiver on the team? And that's also in the range of possibilities based off of the training camp hype. But it sounds like he's going to start as wide receiver 4 on this team, which is not great. But all 3 of the receivers in front of him are dinged up in some way. And it takes one injury for him to then be on the field. And once he gets on the field, if he truly is living up to this hype that he's delivered, I don't expect him to come off the field very often. KC Network was talking about him being their best man coverage beater, stuff like that just gets me a little bit more excited than your Justin Rosses of the past. And there's really no significant veterans available anymore to where they could break this situation. And I mean, there's definitely Brandon Cooks and like Zay Jones and I'm trying to remember Josh Reynolds, like names like that. But if he's good, he's going to get on the field eventually this season. And yeah, his ADP is steaming, but you're going to have leverage on the field at least 50% or so by the end of this. So I think that's another name that I'm pretty interested in. Number 11 is my man, Chris Bell. I think most people that have watched my shows in the past know that I'm interested in Chris Bell. Um, he's still super cheap. You can get him in the last 2 rounds of your drafts. He's stackable. He's bring backable. If you have Josh Allen or if you have any Bills players, you take Chris Bell at the end. Uh, that should be a game where they're losing and throwing the ball. So that feels like a good decision to take a Chris Bell. It also could be a terrible quarterback at that point, but you never know. So Chris Bell to me is very interesting. We got the latest news where he is potentially playing this preseason game. He's shed his non-contact jersey. I don't expect him to be like a full-time wide receiver early in the season because I think that they're going to want to ramp him, play it safe, etc. But after that bye week in week 6, we could see him ramp. And when we're talking about our 7th or 8th wide receiver on our team, we don't really need them to be performing early in the season. We're stacking up players that can help us in tournament rounds. And what better than when you're drafting for tournament rounds to have some leverage on the field? And Chris Bell, I think, can be that, especially if he's not contributing for most of the season. This is where I kind of think about this in multiple ways. Like, so if he's not helping the first like 4 weeks, let's just say, is that an issue for those teams to even make the tournament in some ways if he's not contributing? Maybe. I mean, since we're talking about last pick, it doesn't matter as much, but it is another like somewhat zero-ish player if he's not getting any real points, like nothing more than like 7 or 8 points in those first few weeks. So another way to think about it. But then with the 40% final projection, I think that this is a situation where you really need to be targeting him and chasing him up too, because he's going to play and the team wants him to play. Like Jalen Tolbert is on the roster bubble himself. Tutu Atwell is not expected to make the team. So that just opens up more like veteran spots for these young guys to play. And like he just has a clear spot on the team. They need more big bodied outside receivers, and that's what he does. So I am very interested in Chris Bell as an option. All right, we're at the halfway point. Let's go to option 12. Caleb Douglas, his teammate. So originally when people started this tournament, Caleb Douglas was just never drafted. Now he's steamed up in ADP, still behind Cyrus Allen and Jacoby Lane, but he was so undrafted for so long until recently that his final ownership projection is still under that 50%. I think that he is a strong bet because we know that we're actually going to get some early season points too. He's going to play a deep threat role, which isn't awesome for fantasy, but at the same time, like if it hits in a week, it can be awesome for fantasy. Just takes a play to make him worth it. And he's still going in a spot where, like, yeah, he's going around AD Mitchell, but AD Mitchell has like almost 100% ownership, and Caleb Douglas is going to have half of that, which I think is valuable. I love AD Mitchell too, so I actually have him ranked high enough to where you'd probably still get him like before this, and then you can take Caleb Douglas. But it's one of those that, like, when you're thinking about the situation, it's not always about taking the best player. It's sometimes about taking the leverage that you can have that helps you in the tournament rounds to set you apart. And I think Caleb Douglas offers that opportunity. Is going to be a starter to start the season and will probably play all the season as a starter as long as he stays healthy. Another name that keeps rising is Malachi Fields. He's been talked about as a top 2 wide receiver for the team. I'm like slightly less interested in him. I'd rather have Caleb Douglas than Malachi Fields, and obviously the ADP kind of like shows that. He's a name that's come on late, but there was always an opportunity for him to potentially work his way into this. We're expecting close to 50% ownership, but I wanted to mention his name. I'm not as interested in him as a player because I think the film hasn't been that great. Wasn't excited about him as a prospect either, but I think that they like him for blocking. I think they don't have any other really, really good options out there. So I think he's going to play a decent amount this season. The other thing that I think about this is just like I have notably been fading the Giants offense because I think they have a lot of question marks that are going to hold them back this season when it comes to like the scheme, how it fits with Jackson Dart. But again, when you're taking tournament plays, it doesn't really matter what I think in terms of that. Like it all comes down to, can you score points at a certain point in time? What if Malik Neighbors is out and Malachi Fields has to do a lot of the work? Um, there's just opportunities, and I think this vagueness with a rookie that will get chances to be on the field with leverage, I think that's pretty big for fantasy as well in these big tournaments. 14, Keenan Allen, going to be at about 50% ownership at the end of it. ADP is rising quick, but you're getting leverage on the field. One injury away from being a full-time wide receiver for this team. They have nothing behind him, so very easily could be a top 2 target earner if he ends up getting one of those roles. Josh Downs, Alec Pierce coming off the ankle. He's going to probably practice this week. So that kind of puts Keenan Allen in this wide receiver 3 role as a specialist. But again, one injury away from being like option 2 in the offense, or maybe option 3, just depending on how you think of all the other players. You're getting 50% leverage on the field. I think that's pretty big too. Nothing more to belabor on that point. If you are one of those people that thinks that he's going to get Josh Downs off the field a lot, then this is a good player to take, and you ride that ADP up because you're going to get that leverage. Player 15 I have listed as a green player because he is kind of like so with the running backs, there were players that were fitting into this like less than 15%, like pretty much guaranteed situation. But the wide receivers, I have less of those that I'm interested in. I was like looking at all the names and I'm like, I don't know. I'm not really that interested in player Y. I don't know what the name is, but not interested. But Devon Vele is one that I am interested in. This team's going to do a lot of 2 tight end sets on the field, which means that Devon Vele will have a better opportunity to be targeted in those situations. They're an offense that's going to play fast. They're going to throw the ball more this year than they did last year. Last year, their PROE was especially within the red zone was very low, like record low. And so I expect opportunities for Devon Vele to exist in that red zone area, especially because he's more of a big-bodied receiver. So I'm really excited about him. Under 50%, we're getting to close to like 40% final projection. So I think that this is a player that you should target. That's why I put him as green on this list. Of course, the Jordan Tyson thing could come back to haunt us because he could come back. He probably will come back, but there's also less likelihood that he stays healthy. So this could be a guy that helps you early in the season, and then maybe Tyson's back for a few weeks, and then boom, injured again, or Olave gets injured, blood clots, something. He's just like the backup for this team in general. So I think there's good opportunity with him. Number 16 on the list is Rashad Bateman. Ugly. But what I said about Jacoby Lane applies back to Rashad Bateman too. And I loved taking Jacoby Lane back when. And now his price is steamed, and so there's times where I can't get him because people just keep taking him before I want to take him. And Rashad Bateman's another option. Always gets injured. You can say all of the negative things about him, but also still has a chance to be a top 2 target earner in this offense. And you're getting some leverage on the field. So that's all I really need to say about it. You could not like the player, you can not like anything, but at the same time, like you're getting the potential leverage that you are with a Rashad Bateman who has a top 2 he's wide receiver 2 for the team right now. And obviously there's suspension risk and other things, but I actually don't think he's going to get a suspension. It's just very close to the season, so we'll see. And then I think this is my last receiver, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, 17. Receiver Tyquan Thornton. Seems like he's going to have like a very distinct role in this offense. We saw his ADOT last year in his ADOR. He's just a deep threat, right? But he seemed to have a really strong connection with Patrick Mahomes. I think he'll be on the field a lot because they need that. They love to have a guy that just runs deep often. MVS, Justin Watson, like names like that. And we've seen some of those guys hit in the past with MVS. He had some seasons that were valuable. And I think Tyquan Thornton might be like a similar to maybe even slightly better version of him, and his ADP is falling obviously as the Cyrus Allen stuff comes to fruition, but he is going to be there in 3 wide receiver sets. There's risk with Rashee Rice, and Cyrus Allen kind of actually has played a lot of slot so far in preseason, which could just be the Rashee Rice role. There's also risk with Xavier Worthy. He's dealing with a shoulder injury. So I just think that there's a high likelihood this guy's going to be on the field in a Patrick Mahomes offense that is now projected to do a lot more under center work, which in play action and running the ball, which holds the defense accountable with a good rushing game with Kenneth Walker, which holds the defense accountable to maybe not play as much too high safeties and try to like hone in on the run, which I think then gives you the big play element back for Mahomes, who has missed that over the past couple of years. They also don't have Matt Nagy anymore, which helps a lot. So I have him as green. I have been taking him a lot. He's probably maybe my highest owned of all these names so far. Some tight ends. These are all going to be green. I think you can green light all of them. They're all going to be under what I think is 15% ownership. Again, these models are not going to be perfect. They're directional. So Jacoby Lane could easily be at 60%, but you're still getting some leverage. So I felt comfortable like including him on this list. Do I think Rashad Bateman plays week 1? Yeah, I do. I very much do. I mean, Drew Davenport's a good follow. He had a thread about the legal aspects of all of this, and he thinks that there's very low chance that he gets suspended this year. So, and I tend to follow what he has to say because he's a better expert than I am when it comes to legal stuff. So, okay. So Michael Mayer, I think about him 2 ways. One, this team is going to play a lot of 2 tight end sets. Now, you could argue that 2 tight end sets, like, what's the max that's ever happened? And I wrote about this before, but it has been over the past few years. I think it's been like 70-ish%. That was with Arthur Smith with the Falcons, where they basically use Kyle Pitts as a receiver, which is technically a little closer to what Brock Bowers will do. They're not going to use him as the same type of receiver where he's just running deep. They'll use him all over the field. But Michael Mayer is also a really good tight end. Like I think that if he was just on, I don't know, name a team, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, if he took Sam Laporta's role for the Lions, stuff like that, like he would be drafted really high, probably in the top 12 tight ends in any of those situations, because I think his talent is really strong. Also a guy that coming out of college had a very strong like receiving profile and stuff. They like to put him as an inline tight end. They can have Brock Bowers in the slot. They're going to do a lot of play action. Like you just envision the Seahawks offense and the 49ers offense, because that's where Kubiak came from as well. And they like to do 2 tight ends. They like to have extra men on the field like that. So, and they don't have many receiving weapons. So I think that Michael Mayer, when he's on the field, if Genty's on the field with him, maybe he's option 3, but he could also be option 2 in some situations when he is on the field. So I think you get a base level of production. And then I think that there's the handcuff ability. If something happens to Brock Bowers, we saw him have like 2 spike weeks last year and then another usable week in some of those Brock Bowers missing games. So another guy that I think is a pretty strong target, because I don't think you're getting zeros every single week from him. I think that he'll still get you like 2, 3, 4 points, whatever, to just hold you by. You know, this is more like a 3 tight end build, but to hold you by, or to get you by, and then you know, if an injury happens or if they play more 2 tight ends than I even expect and set some records there, then boom, you've got a bona fide stud. Number 19, Mr. Evan Ingram. The preseason data is pretty promising for him. He was playing inline, he was playing outside, he played in the slot. It signals that they're going to use him more this season. Last year, he had about 400 yards. I think for tight ends, especially in best ball, like late round picks, getting 500 yards from that is like pretty big. That's actually more than a lot of the receivers that we even named are probably going to get. I think he can do it. I think he's going to play more than he did last year in terms of route running. And so I think he's going to be on the field more. And I think that they're going to try to dial him up a little bit more as well, and running like more real routes. Like he did a lot of like underneath stuff where it's just like leak out I think he'll do some more real stuff this year based off of reports. Plus, what even Bo Nix talked about it. He said like, yeah, we're making sure that Evan Ingram is like more in line this season as well. So I think we're just going to see him on the field a little bit more. And you can get him pretty much in every single draft right now. He's about 24% ownership with a final projection about staying there. So I still think like he's a decent target. If you strike out and you don't get like the Pratt Fryermuths and Kate Ottens and whoever is at the end, and you're just looking for like late round tight ends, like, hey, can I just take a bunch of one of them at the end? Evan Ingram, Michael Mayer, two good names to look at. Some of these other ones are a little bit uglier. I will admit, like I'm not as interested anymore, especially with this one. But I do think that Darren Waller, if he makes the team, which I'm not sure is going to happen, that he is like that extremely high upside spike week tight end that you should be targeting at the end of drafts. We saw it last year, and he wasn't even fully like in shape last year, but he had a couple of spike weeks during the time periods that he played. He didn't even have too many routes in those games, but he was just like he's just a target earner when he's on the field. So I think he's a good option for people that you should take chances on. I've taken a decent amount of him, and now with the later reports, like I'm a little more scared to take him. But like depending on the situation, if it's like, hey, I need to take a tight end, and even Evan Ingram's gone, and some of these other ones, and it's like him and I don't know, some name that I'm not interested in, David Njoku. I would take Darren Waller in that situation because I still think that he's going to make the team personally, but I know that the reports haven't necessarily led themselves to that recently. Low owned player that can spike, something that's interesting for best ball. And the last one is Charlie Kolar. For all intents and purposes, he is like their tight end one, been playing on all the snaps. I know we don't love a guy that hasn't caught many passes in the past, and I will admit, like, this is kind of going on a limb a little bit for that. But it's an offense that I want to be invested in. They're hopefully going to score a bunch of points this season, and I think he's going to be on the field a lot. His profile coming out of college, he's not as like unathletic as you would assume based off of his receiving profile. He's got a little bit more juice to him than what you would expect, being known as more of a blocker. So I like to think about this as like there's always a chance that someone's just better than what we think. Like I think right now people are just thinking like this guy's gonna get 200 yards, and could he get 600 yards is the question. And we just talked about Darren Waller, right? Darren Waller, I think I'm still more interested in than Charlie Kolar, but like there have been moments where I'm questioning this because I don't know if Darren Waller is making the team anymore. I do know that Charlie Kolar is going to be out on the field a bunch. And then if I'm doing like a stack with the Chargers or I'm doing a bring back with the Chiefs for week 17, like this could be an interesting play, an interesting way to throw it out there. So again, you're getting a ton of leverage on the field. Another one that I think makes a ton of sense. Awesome. That's the 21 names that I wanted to cover. Two guys that I wouldn't take, but 19 names that I think are valid to take, and then the green ones that I think was like 7 names out of that list. So I'm going to take questions from the chat if there's anything that's out there. So there's a couple of comments. Any thoughts on Josh Jacobs' potential suspension? I'm so torn. Man, so that comment that came out today, I know it was a direct question, but it sounds like the team is still like not sure what's going to happen, right? So I still think that there's some risk, and that's going to keep his best ball price like pretty nice. I think if he's missing a few weeks, I'd still probably want to take him in the 4th round. I don't even know, like a suspension could be 1 game, it could be 2, it could be 4. I have no idea. So I still think that he's worth targeting. I'm above the field on Josh Jacobs just because like I think that he's typically a player who goes in like round 2, back half round 2, early round 3. And we're just so close to the season now where I feel like I there's only a few more days, I think, really, of where we could maybe hear something about suspension. I think Rashee Rice was announced on August 27th last season. Is Charlie Kolar the 11 personnel tight end? He was in preseason. So I thought that was kind of interesting that he was out there for 11 personnel. They left him there. So, yeah. Why am I out on David Njoku? Good question. I'm just leaning into what we saw in preseason. And obviously, you could say, like, why would they put Njoku out there in preseason? He was out there for the last game. And they rotated him, and they kept Kolar on the field pretty much exclusively in 11 and 12 when they had fullback out there, all sorts of stuff. So that's the reason why I'm interested in him. Thoughts on Bryce Lance, DK, 20th round only? It seems like he had some little hype, but he could at least hit when is out. I do not want to take a shot on this, and I'll just say this: like, the reason why I'm not interested is because I expect this team, and I've read as much lately as well, that without Jordan Tyson, I think they're going to be leaning into 2 and even 3 tight end sets a decent amount. Now, they're not going to go 3 tight ends like every play, but I do think that they could be operating with 12 personnel as their base set, where they have either Oscar Delp or Noah Fant out there as like the inline, and then they have Juwan Johnson as like the slot-ish type of tight end. So I just don't think you're going to get many like snaps from Bryce Lance, and it feels more of a dart throw where I'm not even sure that he is the wide receiver 4. I think it could be Barian Brown. So I just think that there's too much ambiguity. I'd rather like hone in on some other names that I may have covered that could be available in that round. Thoughts on Jamari Taylor, round 20? No, I don't think so. I do think that he will, end up on the practice squad. If LaQuint Allen is out, I think they may still keep Amir Abdullah as their RB3 because he just kind of slots into a lot of what LaQuint Allen would do, even though they use Chris Rodriguez in that role. I think they're trying to test out who can do stuff that's similar. So I just don't think that there's much room for Jamari Taylor this season to do much. If something happened to Tootin or Rodriguez, I think that they would go out and try to get somebody else. I'm not sure that they would lean into Jamari Taylor. So these aren't the types of players that I usually try to take a swing on in drafts. Guys that I think like may not even make the team at this point. All right, no more questions in the chat, so I'm going to get going. But again, guys, I didn't show the full list, but you got a chance to see my leverage list for 2026 for Best Ball Mania specifically. Some of those may apply to DK as well. I haven't done analysis on DK yet, but really appreciate it. Please follow me on X. If you like this show, please feel free to subscribe on YouTube or Apple or Spotify. And then the last thing I'll say is if you want my rankings, you can get them at Fantasy Life. 10% off with code ZANE. There's also a draft companion tool that works for ESPN. There's a waiver tool that works for all sorts of platforms, including FFPC, which is valuable to me because that's where I play a lot of my redraft stuff. I did get one more question in the chat, so I'm going to address it before I go. And I think Jalen Tolbert is underestimated and getting covered up by rookie hype. Thoughts? I did talk about this a little bit when I mentioned Chris Bell and Caleb Douglas, but he is on the roster bubble currently. I think he'll make it and just be like a holding spot for when Chris Bell ramps up. But I do think that Chris Bell will eventually win that role. Being a Cowboys, have extensive history with Jalen Tolbert and have watched every route that he's ever ran with that team. And then even last year, I watched every route because I'm crazy. I don't think he has anything to his game, man. Like he's just not a good separator. He's a decent blocker. He has versatility. That's another thing that's valuable for him. Like he can do some slot work. He can go outside, be the Z, the X, whatever. But I think he's just going to get passed up in this offense. They've already shown a willingness to lean into Caleb Douglas, and then which means that there's also the willingness to potentially lean into Chris Bell once he's fully ramped up coming out of that bye. I don't think he's a good pick at this moment. No offense. I hope that doesn't hurt anybody's feelings, but that's just how I feel. Anyway, thanks, guys. Talk later.